What's up, everyone? Happy Friday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware about for the last week. Today, we're going to have Matt Monk, who is a solutions engineer here at Pax8, join us here in a little bit. We're going to be talking about maturing MSP channel space, maybe even the maturing customer space, and about how he's seen product selection and the questions he's answering change during his tenure here at Pax8, which is quite extensive. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. We'd love to be interactive with you. Don't forget to sign up for Pax8 Beyond, and let's jump into the news.
I think, Dom, I got to tell on myself a little bit. Every time you say all about that jazz or all that jazz, I think about that song, which really just shows that I'm obviously maybe former, theater. So maybe I've told on myself here, but I wanted to tell on myself. I couldn't get away without doing it. But anyways, I digress, man. It's great to see you. I'm at IT Nation Connect. It's been fantastic, man. I think
I hear the block party went well.
It did. It was awesome. Yeah, we had a great time out there. It was outdoors. It was nice and cool. But man, I tell you, we did this talk again. This is the fourth time that Tom Lawrence, Jason Slagle, and myself have given the talk on how I would hack you. And every single time, Dom, and I know you know this to be true, the MSPs are getting better and better. We actually had 3 people out of the about 200 people in the room raise their hand and say, yes, we actually are starting to do red team operations. We're starting to think about red side and teaching people hacking techniques so they can understand it. And there'd never been any before. So I'm extremely happy that we're continuing to see that maturation that you and I both talk about, which is the whole name of this show today, right? Is this maturation of the client, of the MSP, and all those things. Anyway, so let's get kicked off with the news. We've got one that hits a little close to home for you, Dom, doesn't it?
Yeah, just last week we covered a school district in Nevada, CCSD, and I forget what CCSD stands for, but go to last week's show and check the link. And literally, like the day before that show or the 2 days before that show, turns out that possibly a similar threat actor hit the district that my kids go to. So I did a write-up about this. The link's in the chat. It's obviously an evolving situation, and I'll keep it updated. Long story short, it's a very similar MO. Spooky messages hit staff. Notifications start coming out, which I'll touch on in a second. Spooky message starts hitting parents, right? So I wrote a lot of intro fluff in this. I really tried to write it to also address other parents who don't have the background knowledge that you and I have on this kind of stuff. So I won't belabor the article. But the point is what I wanted to call out is, one, this is increasing, right? And the interesting thing to me is there's not a ransomware component here.
Right.
This is a straight exfil and exploit human emotion, for lack of a better term.
Well, and Dom, it goes back to you and I talking. You didn't kick back to just me and Dom. It goes back to you and I talking about how we were going to continue to see the efforts and the ways the ransom is extracted increase and move more and more towards that end victim, right? That your child's data, your family's data.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I wanted to call out, and we've actually talked, this is Jefferson County Schools here in Colorado. We've talked about them way back in the Log4Shell days, because they very proactively said all of our portals are no longer accessible outside while they assessed it. So they're really good. They're one of the few districts I've ever met that have an actual IS, information security function.
Well, and a communications capability, right? Like, and something to actually get the message out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With proactive updates and brutal honesty on, hey, law enforcement's running the show here at this point. They're going to dictate what updates you get and when. Being brutally transparent about that helps a ton. So if you are a parent and your school district's going through this, if they're being that transparent, understand they're being more transparent than most. And while having a lack of information sucks and can be frustrating, there's a lot of humans going through a huge struggle right now trying to figure out what happened, how to move on from it. And on top of that, you have federal and local law enforcement saying, you can't say that, you can't say this is when you can say this. So they're limited in what they can discuss, and for good reason, right? The threat actor here is Singularity MD, allegedly, just based on like screenshots I received.
Right.
And it's the same threat actor group. If it's who we're thinking about, it's the same tag that hit that district in Nevada, and I believe a few other districts. So it sucks. Hits close to home. The claim is not data about 90,000 students. That's a lot of data, right? So we'll see what comes out of it. Definitely follow the article. Keep it up to date.
And Dom, back to the point about the data that comes out of it, right? One of the things that I like to talk about is, you're seeing an ever-growing need for the question of, do I need this data? What data do I need to collect? And in a school district, you obviously have a lot of data you have to have. You have to have grades, you have to have student names, you have to have socials, things that are identifying information. And so you are juicy targets, adding to the fact that in addition, if you got data about students and social security numbers and dates of birth and all of those things, you're going to be in a position where your kid's not going to use that credit for another 8-9 years. I might have the ability to gain credit upon their name. I might have the ability to start using that and doing things long before it'll ever be noticed, right? Long before it would ever turn into something that that kid would ever have to be able to see and the family would be able to see. The other aspect of this is we have to start as a nation dealing with data has to be in a way that it can't be exfilled. The simple solution to these type of things, and I say simple, but I'm being extremely summative, is encrypting the data in a way that it can't be read by the threat actors once it's been exfilled. Right? And you start getting into things like, I hope we see more and more people understanding these things. In fact, it was funny. I was just at Sentinel OneCon down in Miami, and I met a gentleman that was actually talking about real homomorphic encryption. I'll wait for the laughter to stop. But anyways, sorry, super nerd joke. But they're saying they really can leave it completely encrypted at rest, at transit, and also in consumption in some cases. And so anyways, tangent, but I do think we're going to have to start seeing these school districts do better about making it to where the data isn't exfiltratable, right? And that would solve the second half of that equation.
And like you said, managing what they have, how long they have it, which is tough. There's a lot of compliance in schools, but also finding a way to put more money into that infrastructure. Education is obviously the first budget line item of any school district, as it should be, but man, these IT and IS departments are woefully underfunded for the breadth. I mean, a decent sized district will have 150,000 end users ranging in age from 5 to 70, right? That's a really hard environment to maintain.
That's the most trainable security posture you can have, right? As a 5-year-old, you can really train them how to be
They'll get
perfect
it.
with the tools.
We have a question from the chat. MSP Madman wants to know if you're in a prison suit, so I figured we would address.
No, I'm actually wearing my Not Wes Spencer t-shirt. Yeah, I'm rocking that. Wes Spencer presented today, and they handed out everybody a Not Wes Spencer shirt to wear in the audience. It was hilarious. So. And Mario said he loved the hold music, so I actually have one vote for the hold music, not against the hold music. I wasn't against the hold music guy, but
I'm trying to go the classic Cisco hold music route. I think that would
that's, or maybe something like that would be fantastic. But okay, so let's get on to the next news article. We've beleaguered this one at this point. All right, so Russian hackers switched to living off the land techniques, right? So LOTL stands for living off the land. So we get a little acronym here to cause power outage. Russian state hackers have evolved their methods for breaching industrial control systems by adopting living off the land techniques that enable reaching the final stage of the attack quicker and with less resources. Basically, what they're saying is the threat actor doesn't have to bring anything. They're going to use techniques and methodologies that allow them to do this inside using tools that already exist that are harder and harder to detect. So security researchers highlight that the change opens the door to attacks that are more difficult to detect, like I said, and don't necessarily require sophisticated malware for industrial control systems. Native binaries, things like net1. In case you don't know this, net.exe has a sister that is net1.exe that is the exact same binary and can be used, right? And so using these types of binaries, they said Sandworm Threat Group breached Ukrainian critical infrastructure organization, an attack that required less than 4 months to reach the final phase, which is actually for a nation state in what would be presumably protected equipment, right? that is pretty quick. Sandworm is a hacker group active since 2009, linked to Russia's General Staff Main Intelligence, or GRU. And in late 2022, incident responders at Mandiant, which is owned by Google, responded to a disruptive cyber attack in Ukraine. This is back in 2022, midway through the first 6 months or so of the war. And they said, based on evidence of lateral movement, the attacker potentially had access to the SCADA system for up to 3 months, meaning they waited, they were prepared. And if you do that math, that was very near the beginning of the conflict at that time. And so you're seeing that they had this access, they sat there, they're saying in SCADA. Actually, Dom, will you get the SCADA definition? I feel terrible. I've used it forever, but I've never defined it. But yeah, SCADA is basically your control infrastructure for physical things in the real world, in this case, power systems. The attack culminated in two disruptive
control and data acquisition.
All right, supervised control and data acquisition. The attack culminated with two events. One was a power outage on the October 10th of 2022, when they used a ISO CD-ROM image file, right, to load the ISO file to bring it in on sclic.exe. So essentially, they took out the power, right, Dom? So let's go back. We don't have to beat this up. Let's talk about basically living off the land, or LOL bins, or GTFO bin, and then let's talk about maybe this impact to our world with power from that perspective, right?
It's only a little important. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, just a smidge. But we are seeing
Yeah.
threat actors more and more use the tools around them. My granddad always said, "Don't jump me in a rock pile, because I'll sure throw a rock." And I think what's interesting is these threat actors are now able to come in and pick up rocks and use them to destroy systems that they're there to actually function and do their job. And so you have to get better and better at detecting good binaries, good things, doing bad things, right? I think that's the point. You have this signed by Windows binary for net. When it starts doing something else, we need to be able to alert on it. We talked about this in our how I would hack you yesterday, is how you would defend yourself. And Dom, I think you're a big fan of this as well. But using canary tokens as methodologies to find when something's being executed or find when something's actually doing something. So, anyways, just kind of wanted to bring that up. And then the other piece of it is
we speculated about this a long time ago, like right after Ukraine Russia broke out,
right when we were with Mackenzie.
Even before that, though, like right when the conflict broke out, we speculated on, what level of cyber engagement would come out of a new world conflict, right? And I think this is what we're seeing. We also speculated that they might not push the button, and it seems like perhaps they didn't push all the buttons.
3 months
they built the buttons. So it's an interesting thing, but understand like the barrier that was crossed is massive, right? It's not, and it's less about turning it off, which is obviously not great, but hypothetically you could turn it back on. If you think about, the one of the most famous malwares in the world that most certainly did not come out of the United States.
No, of course not.
It didn't turn anything off. It spun it out, right? And then it's physically broken. So there's a lot you can do if you're compromising OT and SCADA and that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, 100%. And when you think about it, I think wars of the future will be fought in that way. And if you think back to castle and moat methodology, how did you win against a highly entrenched enemy? You just made them starve from the inside, right? And I think when you start thinking about this from that perspective, if you did that to the United States, if you shut down the power and multiple systemic power outages and multiple systemic grid outages for long times, I would kill you for a chocolate bar in like 3 days. We don't suffer well in the United States, right? And so there's some real challenges to us, and we would have some real problems as a nation. It would be interesting. And so I put that as in my mind. I think we will start seeing these type of IT/OT shifts to public infrastructure as parts of continued conflict.
It's shell on the beach, right? Weaken it, attack it.
100%. Yeah, you won't be able to get gas because gas pumps are down. You won't have infrastructure because you can't run computers. You won't write a lot of those things, and so it makes sense. All right, next article. We're way behind, but we're having a good time chatting, so I'm good with it. Sorry, Mr. Monk. All right, Dom, Microsoft Sys8 zero-day flaw exploited in CLOP, and I think you said it well before. It's CLOP being CLOP, and so it's really just saying that Microsoft are threat actors exploiting a zero-day vulnerability in the service management software Sys8, which is like an IT service management platform, or ITSM, another acronym, of course. The CLOP ransomware is notorious for exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in widely used software. Recent examples include Move It, Transfer, Go Anywhere, and Excellion FTA. Currently identified as CVE 2023-47246, the vulnerability was discovered on November 2nd after hackers exploited it to breach a on-premise Sys8 servers. The Microsoft Threat Intelligence team discovered the security issue being leveraged in the wild and alerted Sys8. Microsoft determined that vulnerability was used to deploy CLOP ransomware by a threat actor. It tracks as Lace Tempest, aka Fin11 and TA505, which is another thing I want to talk about here in a minute, is the multiple names for threat actor groups and threat intelligence is very frustrating. But okay, Sys8 published a report on Wednesday disclosing that CVE 2023-47246 is a path traversal, which means you can kind of change the path you're trying to get. Vulnerability leads to an unauthorized code execution, meaning you can get to a path that then, with that traversal, allows you to then run a remote code execution in certain race conditions. The company also, maybe not even race conditions, just certain conditions. The company also shares technical details on the attack uncovered following. As they go through it, which we don't have these images here, but we actually had some really interesting PowerShell and some things they were doing. And then they executed this user.exe process and exfilled data. And again, Dom, it kind of comes back to what you're talking about. We don't talk about ransomware again here. We are not talking about ransomware in the sense of encryption. And if you talk to most people and say ransomware, what are they going to think? Encryption. But ransom is just ransom. If I can make Dom pay me money for something, if somebody maybe holds my water bottle hostage and then puts dinosaur stickers on it,
that would be going
you
too
know
far.
who you are, and you know who you are, whoever it is. But ultimately, it takes it too far. Sys8 users strongly recommend to switch to version 23.3.36 or later. And what's interesting is if you and I took a few minutes right now, Dom, we went and just found the version. One of the best methods to find these in Shodan is to use like a favicon hash, right? Because now you have a hash of the favicon that would come up that's publicly available. And what's interesting, if we did this right now, Dom, do you think we'd find any of these Sys8 servers still on, not using that version?
No, they're definitely patched. We're good. Everyone patched them.
Oh yeah,
confident.
Okay, cool.
We all learned from Move It. Oh wait, no, Move It's still coming up. So
yeah, no, they don't, and that's
for
the
love
problem.
of God, patch your stuff.
Jeez, right? Please patch quick, patch often. Anyways, I digress. Let's move on to the next one. I just want to make everybody aware if you're using Sys8, there is a vulnerability for sure.
With patch available, install it.
This is huge. And this just came out this morning, I believe it was, or late last night, on the 10th, so today, at 6:49 Eastern Time, I guess it was just this morning, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China confirmed its services were disrupted by a ransomware attack that impacted the system on Wednesday, which to me, and I haven't done a massive amount of research on this, so understand this is just coming from an anecdotal feeling that I see. I don't know that I can recall a Chinese company of any size disclosing a ransomware or seeing anybody talking about it.
You asked me, I thought you were being ironic, like there was an obvious one, but I can't think of one.
I genuinely can't, yeah. And I think what's interesting about this is the single largest bank. It says ICBC FS has been conducting a thorough investigation, is progressing its recovery efforts with the support of its professional team, right? So they made their communication. It says that we successfully cleared U.S. Treasury trades executed on the 8th and 9th. Like we're talking about country to country, massive industrial and commercial investments and money in the U.S. Treasury market. The ICBC is restoring systems and services following a ransomware attack that disrupted U.S. Treasury market, causing equities clearing issues. Right, we're now talking about disrupting the very lifeblood of companies in the things that we're dealing with in the financial markets from these impacts. They're currently unable to connect to DTCC and SCC, which I don't know what those are. I don't even want to pick them up at this point. It says an emergency notice issued to equity traders and shared by its research. And I think maybe, and this is speculative, I don't think we would have heard about this if this did not impact our U.S. Treasury markets directly. What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. We were conjecturing about it before the show. It can't be that it's not happening in China. That's not realistic,
right?
So it's more of China is a very closed loop system, if you will. So they're probably not bragging about their current state of cybersecurity. So I would agree. Like if it did not impact other nations, it would be a non-event.
And as we see, security expert Kevin Beaumont, which, don't call me a security expert. I hate that term. Security student, researcher, whatever, said an ICBC Citrix server last seen online on Monday and unpatched against an actively exploited NetScaler security bug tracked as Citrix Bleed. Right, so this comes from what was the recently Citrix Bleed, if I remember. That wasn't even that long ago. It says the bank actually is the largest bank, has $214.7 billion in profits of $53 billion, right? Revenue and profits of $53 billion in 2022. 10.7 million corporate and 720 million individual customers, including, in addition, its 17,000 domestic branches. So what's interesting about this is we don't even know what the threat actors even have at this point. You don't often see a ransomware attack that doesn't include exfil at this point. Although, ironically, maybe we should take a page from their book when they exfil of like how they got past the Great Firewall of China with the data, I suppose.
Right.
But anyways, all right, I digress. One of the things I just wanted to point, and we probably will come back to this, Dom, is this is a major bank and financial institution. We've talked about disrupting power. We've now talked about disrupting financial institutions. Those can be methods of war down the road, right? And we're seeing some very interesting
one of the iterations
there.
of my favorite Christmas movies. I think it was the third one.
Okay.
Whatever.
Home Alone 3?
Die Hard.
Okay, Die Hard. Okay, I didn't even know which one it was.
Yeah. I think it was the third one. The whole premise was cyber war, right? Like, which was weird given the cast, but it worked. But nonetheless, I say that to say, what they attacked first was the critical infrastructure, right?
100%.
The traffic lights were the example they used, but then they attacked finance. And it really makes you think, what happens if Wall Street stops working? Middle of the trading day, just stops.
Yeah. You have your billions of dollars per second type of calculations, right? When you really think about, even just in the systemic trading, right? A lot of people don't maybe realize, but a lot of trading is done as systemic trading. It's done by, automation in a lot of cases. Even machine learning and AI is doing tons of micro trades in a lot of cases for these people, and those all stop. So whatever would have been earned in those trades is not happening, right? Whatever would happen speculatively is not happening. And so I don't know. Anyways, I think the point is we're going to continue to see ever increasing, attacks, which will continue to force regulators, government, legislators, everybody in this world to continue to raise this tide, which I think is the actual good outcome of these things, and more public, large challenges like this are better and worse. But okay, we've got some brilliant words from Robin Harris as usual. Let's go ahead and bring her in, and y'all don't have to keep listening to us for 6 minutes.
This is very interesting. I have my phone here and I'm looking at an email I got on Saturday from Blockfi about a security incident. August 23rd, third party had a breach. Isn't that interesting? In a previous episode, we talked about when you're using third parties, and we were talking about global vendors that we use, global suppliers, but this is just a vendor, and basically the same risk apply. So when a company outsources something, guess what? You don't outsource the risk. You might be thinking you are mitigating some of the risk, and that can be true, but you are not off the hook. When you take on doing business with a vendor, your customers are still relying on you to provide a certain amount of security. So I got this email from Blockfi. This is very clever. Sometimes we're kind of straightforward in our thinking, and we got to start thinking a little bit more like the bad guys, because they are very genius in how they plan what they do. This was a very targeted attack. So Blockfi is filing bankruptcy, so they had some problems. And the company that's doing the restructuring, so this is the legal organization that's doing the restructuring, they targeted the cell phone provider used by a specific person, and they got that person's information, and apparently they had the credentials. So what they did was, you know how you're using MFA? You put your password in and it sends you a text. Now, most people don't realize that SMS MFA is not that safe, and this just proves the point. So the bad guys intercepted the code. Now they've got the credentials, and now they've got the code. So they were able to get into the account and get all of this information about these people's accounts. This was very, very targeted. I mean, think of, you might have a finance person, your CEO, someone who has access to very privileged information. The bad guys can target that specific person to execute a breach. So this is very fascinating, because what that tells us is that we have to take extra precautions in adopting security. So one of the changes that I'm going to personally make is my accounts that are really sensitive, I'm going to switch over to something like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator. There's even more sophisticated ones. But yeah, that SMS thing, it's just not as safe as we thought it was. And we really have to think about, as we start using emerging technologies and different things, the bad guys are going to also figure out how to exploit those technologies, and they're going to become more savvy in executing their exploits. One of the things that you will see coming up in the new version of ISO 27000-2022 is they're putting in a requirement about continuous monitoring and doing threat intelligence monitoring. These are new controls that are being put in place for the ISO because of this very thing. So you think we have to become more sophisticated. We have to become more sophisticated in how we treat security. We're going to have to use more tools. And it's going to be an additional investment because it's a combination of tools and technology that are going to be required to deal with the evolving landscape of threats and bad actors. It's really part of doing business. Now, I know in this day and age, it's just mind-boggling when you see people that don't have antivirus or don't keep antivirus up to date on their personal computer. That's our minimum requirement. But there are people who don't have antivirus on their computers. They don't have an ID, a lock on their phones. So these are simple things. Because our work goes with us, it's on our work phone, and we can access it. When we don't take the necessary precautions personally, not only are we putting our personal selves at risk, we're putting our families at risk, we're putting our businesses at risk. So all across the landscape, we have to up level. We have to upgrade how we treat security. It's just becoming a requirement. And we have to teach our children. We have to teach our teens. Oh my God, we got to teach our seniors. Yeah, grandma. Grandma needs to be more aware of these things. We really, really, really have to make security a part of our daily lives. And when we start becoming really security conscious and savvy as just a way of how we manage our daily lives, we'll bring that into our work life also. So all across the board, everybody's going to have to play a different game. And that's my 2 cents on up-leveling our security.
All right, Dom, we got a minute. Let's take a look at some of the comments coming in from YouTube, because this has been an especially fun show. I may have laughed a non-zero amounts. Let's go through a couple of them. I think it's probably going to pop up as unknown Jack.
Jack unknown.
But I believe it is not unknown Jack. It is someone I know, and that person has my jersey that says Cyber Matt Lee on it, and now mine only has Cyber Matt Lee 2 because the company that made it auctioned the first one off when I wasn't there. It's just brutal. But the first comment was, just watch marketing and CSO go to war over what data to keep and not to keep. This is back to that reference. So schools should be very discerning in what they keep and what they don't keep, and maybe even companies to this unknown Jack's point. And then he goes on to troll me, saying, Matt, are you suggesting we should anonymize data in different parts of organizations? No way. And he's right. And not just anonymize data in different portions of organizations through encryption, through things like that, but also probably find ways where the data doesn't have to come to me. A great example, there's a company called Credivera using distributed ID or DID Ion, DID Web to use distributed identities to issue credentials. And they give a concept of somebody having a wallet, right? And that wallet is theirs. And they can tell the school I have a license, that I have my vaccination, but the school doesn't actually have to receive them. They don't actually have to have those vaccination cards. They can just have proof of assertion that they exist, which means that we reduce all that data that has to be gathered, right? And it works in that way. And it's a very interesting thing to think about. I know he's trolling me a little bit. I figured we'd bring it up. And the funniest thing that came out, though, I think first was I have Cyber Matt Lee. That's been my persona for quite a while, right? And then someone, Roddy, pops up, and let's bring it on the screen. So how do we give Dom a tag like Cyber Matt Lee, right? And so Dom very rapidly answered. Let's pull it up on the screen here. Dom's going to be Huge Thunder.
Huge Thunder.
From now forward, Dom, you are hashtag Huge Thunder LLC. Going to be fantastic.
And I expect a costume at the next show we go to together.
Yeah, exactly. We need the Huge Thunder costume. Anyways, they also went on to say before, and I won't make y'all pull this one up, but Henry, someone said, I have a box of Band-Aids. Can you use those for patching? Yes, you have to write the specific patch number on them for them to be effective, and then you must slap them on the side where the disk goes in on your computer. That's the only way they're effective. So, all right, let's move on. We've got an amazing guest with us. We are now rocking Matt Squared in this show, which makes me very happy. Let's bring in Mr. Monk. He is a brilliant human, and I'm happy to have you here. Good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here. This is exciting. I'm happy to get kicking off on the fun stuff we got to cover today.
Yeah, let's talk about it, right? So you've been at Pax8 for how long?
So I started Pax8 June 12th, 2017. So I've been
So that
here for about
calculate
6.5 years.
Yeah, 6. I was doing the math. I had to take my shoes off,
Yeah.
or I was about
So
to.
June
But if
this
you,
next year will be 7 years.
well, if you think about it, that's like 42 years in dog years or in Pax8 years, right? Because we move at like the
For
speed of
sure.
light, and so it's got to feel
Absolutely.
like eons in your world. Why don't you tell everybody what your role is and what your background is, real quick, for me, brother?
Yeah, so it definitely has felt like eons. I mean, there's been a ton of different changes and developments, over the years, and it's gone from Wild West to a lot more structured and controlled in a lot of ways. But I'm a solutions engineer at Pax8, of course, and my background essentially is networking. Right, I did a lot of networking. I went to ITT Tech for networking, and actually, if you guys know, it got shut down. I was one of the lucky members that was 6 months away from getting my degree there, which I guess doesn't mean anything now,
No,
right?
Oh, no.
And they
no.
shut down. So luckily,
Oh,
I got into that boat where everything got put back, in my account, right? I didn't have to really pay for much, which
that's
was really
cool.
helpful. But I didn't get the
Nice.
piece of paper that I was after, right? But that's okay. Um, Before that, I was really, doing restaurant management stuff and working with people. I was a chef in Chicago. I worked at a place called the Tasting Room, and was thinking about the Cordon Bleu University and things like that. But
Mm.
once I started, had kids, I was like, this is not sustainable. I need to get in something IT. It's always going to be around, right? Ever growing, ever expanding, ever changing. This is going to be a place I can get into and call my home. So that's kind of a little bit of my background, but it's been a pretty wild ride on the SE team.
I love the kind of mixed backgrounds. I come from that same thing, right? For anybody that ever wants to sit with me at a bar for 4 hours or so, I can tell you about some of the things I've been involved in my life. And I think in general, it gives you context and understanding, right? By being involved in some of those other things. But the ITT Tech ride, at least you got a lot of free education then by that definition, right? Like at the
Right?
end of the
Yeah,
day. So that's
absolutely.
nice.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. So listen, one of the things that Dom and I talk about a lot is that MSPs are maturing at a really rapid pace today, and that we're seeing their growth be not just in security, in operations, in communications, in CSAT, in capabilities, in ProServe capabilities. We talked about that all last week. So tell me in your thoughts, like what are some of the things that stand out to you that have changed kind of the most in MSPs? Like you get to work with them every day. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
So
So,
would Thunder over here.
huge thunder. Yeah. So, I mean,
Uh,
essentially, I think the biggest thing for me would be, when I first started doing this, and again, like I said, it was definitely different in the early days of Pax8, right? We had less services, less things on the line card. The conversation wasn't as involved, right? It wasn't as in depth. It's, hey, we have interest in this. We need to get this provision kicked off. We go through our 10-page
yeah.
packet, right, to provision these services off. But the conversation that you would have with partners, right, was more, hey, I'm looking to cover this base, right? I need this for my client. I need this, and that was kind of the end of it, right? It was like, hey, okay, well, we've got something there, and here's kind of how you do it, right? How you implement it. Here's kind of the strategy for it, and you moved on. And it's gotten to this evolved place where now I'm having conversations where partners know exactly where they want to be, right? They're starting to get into frameworks and verticals, and here, this is the space that I want to be in, and here are all the things I know I
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
cover from my end, right? Instead of just plugging holes for the end client, and that's been super engaging, right? It's caused me to
Yeah,
dive
yeah.
into more of the technology space rather than just saying, hey, I know this version of this product, right? And here's how it works, right? It's getting to be, well,
Yeah.
hey, now we can start segueing into a bunch of different conversations. And it's been a pretty wild ride. It's a lot more engaging.
Would you say people are coming with more problems to solve than just wrench turning actions? Would you say that's a delta? Like instead of me asking you
Yeah.
for viewing this platform, potentially I'm saying, hey, I need to solve this issue because I have this client going through this. Is that what you'd say is kind of pivoting as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're addressing specific headaches while not leaving that technology mindset, right? And hey, we need to make sure we're getting into this spot, covering this specific piece of, security while maintaining, their pre-built stack or what they're trying to get to, right? Their
Sure.
kind of end goal. Whereas I feel like again before it was, hey, we know we need X, and we know you have
Right.
something here. We're gonna plug this in and just get
Yeah.
moving with it.
It almost seems like you're saying it gets like more nuanced, right? As you understand more and you learn more about the challenge, you're like, no, I need to solve this thing, not I need an EDR and you has EDR. put please EDR
Right.
on, right? And I don't mean that to be
Exactly.
diminutive. I was the same guy. I went through it. Dom, have you, think back to your early days when you're
Never.
trying
Nope.
to,
Nope.
no, you don't do that.
No. I always had a strategy. No, dude, any new shiny thing, I was like, that's cool, I need it. And then I
Yeah.
literally never deployed it, right? Like sometimes I still catch myself doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Like the domain
100%.
I just bought, it just happens.
Oh yeah, I know which one that is actually. It's fantastic. Yeah, well, and Matt, when you talk about this too, in the early days, you probably had more of a transactional relationship. Do you feel you're more of an advisor now in a lot of MSPs world as an external kind of thought and understanding of all the products that are out there and their interactions and how they work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, you hit it on the head, right? When we first started, it was, hey, we've got orders coming in. We need to create the accounts. We need to send that purchase order, right? Kind of that transactional. Hey, this came through, and it kind of transitioned to we'd actually have sales reps, right? We were getting so many calls and asks about these services that they would just walk over right to the desk and sit and, hey, I've got someone on the phone here. We need to have a conversation about this. So we had to, as a team, right? And we were kind of small at the time. I think it was like 5 or 6 of us. We kind of had to transition into, hey, we're going to be getting on these conversations a lot. This is going far beyond, right? Just provisioning an account and getting some, an admin start, right? And hey, this is where you're going to log in. So we all basically had to just pick a spot. Hey, what are we doing, right? You're covering Microsoft,
Yeah.
you're covering continuity, you're doing security, and we kind of broke it out. It became this thing where we had to dive into that technology, right? We had to become that subject matter expert, not of just that service, right? But the technology behind it so that we could have that same kind of conversation with whatever else was coming on that, down the pipe. So, and especially now with how small our team is, right? It's important that we're a group of solutions engineers that essentially can talk to you about, hey, yeah, if you're interested in a specific service, awesome, great. Let's have a conversation about it, what it's going to do, how it's going to cover some bases for you. But we can now
Sure.
segue into a ton of different other things too, right? Hey, well, I noticed you have a headache, with connection activity from remote users. Hey, let's talk about it. How does that actually work, right? Yeah, I mean, to answer your question shortly, it's given me so much more of, like I said, of an engaging conversation. I've had to expand my knowledge so much to get around and wrap around my head around all the technologies and how they play well together, what integrates where, and what kind of tickets
Yeah.
are going to be solved where, right? And how that works. And partners have done the same thing. We've seen that shift, right? As I'm working with them, that again, they just wanted the purchase, great, where are my credentials, we'll get through it. And now it's, hey,
Sure.
let's talk about how this is actually going to help me, right? What kind of operational efficiency is this going to gain for me, right? How do I get this working on my level internally, so that way it pans down to your clients, right? And that's something I think is starting to be seen now too, right? Is it's not just about, hey, we're going to do this because our client needs it. It's like, hey, we need to do this internally, right?
Yeah.
We need to be the model of this, and that way everything that we're doing and practicing, that's going to go downstream, right? And it's just natural. So I'm seeing a lot of partners move that direction, and it's awesome. So
Yeah. There's something you said in there that I wanted to touch on a little bit, which is, you talk about broadening your knowledge. You're also having to deepen your knowledge. There's more and more nuanced questions that are deeper in something and how it applies. And is this going to be a problem for my Macs? And what are the things I should do as considerations for this? And are you hearing more questions about not just trying to deploy the product, but actually trying to deploy the product with purpose and with understanding of the nuances around you, and also understanding of the things that you're already using and deploying? To your point, you kind of said that from an integrations perspective.
yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? And that's, I think, especially important for our team, right? And where we get involved with that onboarding process is being able to hash out the nuances and things that our partners are going to run into, right? We're doing deployments in our own environments and demo environments and trying to make sure, hey, we're creating that feel where if you're going to go in at this and we understand the technology, the backing for it, right? What is this actually going to plug holes for you? What is it going to do
Yeah.
operationally for yourself internally, for your clients? But we can segue and have those conversations, and that's definitely not how it started, right? It was much
Right.
more, hey, ticket came in, we need to get this provisioned, and in some cases it was a 24-hour gig, right? Where we'd have orders coming over overnight, and we'd have to get in there and figure out why it failed, re-provision it, and get it going. And it was a wild ride to be completely where we are today. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You think about it. You said, MSPs just kind of wanted to get the credentials and get the heck out, and that was all it was for. So at the very beginning, have you always tried to take I need to actually talk to this person about this product so I can educate approach? Has that been where this works, or does it usually happen in the sales side of it? Help me understand kind of that just exposition for people and where an SE comes into play.
Yeah. So, For me personally, it's always been I wanted to get into the solution more, right? Because my kind of goal getting into Pax8 is I was like, I want to be a salesman. I don't want to be a solutions engineer. I want to be a subject matter expert on something, right? And get my fingers into something that it can be contributing in the right ways, right, to our partner base. But and for me it was MDM, right? So it was one of those services where it's like I knew as those orders were coming in that I needed to dive right into this and be able to speak intelligently to the problems that were actually coming in on those phone calls, right? And also kind of, a shout out to the XSC team as this time has transitioned over.
Define it. You used an acronym. Got to define
it. Well, XSCs is a overview for our security solutions consultants, operation solution consultants, continuity solutions consultants, productivity solutions consultants. You hit them all.
You hit enough of them to win the battle for sure. You didn't offend any of your SSCs or XSCs or any of the Cs.
I love it.
So very awesome. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, like I was saying, that they've gotten to this thing now where all of them are speaking intelligently on this, right? I mean, I don't get into a lot of the pre-sale side as much as I had to before, because these guys are trained up, right? They're getting their security plus, right? They're starting to learn the technologies, and I'm just helping them, right, from my side and from my team side, make sure if they have any nuanced questions, right? And all those one-off asks, or, hey, I need X. Well, that's where you bring us in, and we can start talking about the actual nuts and bolts, right? And how this is going to layer on and what's going to happen. So huge shout out to that team is they've come a long ways, right? So
yeah, and I see it every day. And we have a chat channel where a lot of this stuff comes in for like talking to each of the vendors. There's a chat channel where people come in and chat and talk to the vendors, SEs, and the vendors, subject matter experts. And I'm seeing more and more the front end salespeople are asking questions that are fairly complex. I mean, they're and nuanced in the response and what they're doing. And I've watched that knowledge over the last year and a half just do this. Like, they just keep growing and keep going up. And I think it speaks to this demand curve of all of us maturing. Right? I think that's what it speaks towards. If you go back to what you've said several times, we need it to work this way with this type of thing. Or a lot of those variables, the nuances of how the client is going to particularly react as well, and some of those impacts to different client-based things, right? So basically focus on user experience and client efficacy. Are you starting to see that shift all the way down to the client end? Or is it still in the how do I use this tool and make it function kind of stage?
It's like a mix and match.
It's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's a mix and match, right? I still see, partners all over the place on where they want to be. But overall, the conversations have been, hey, what is this going to do to my end client, right? And really, I guess, being more directed at specifics for what they need to cover, but also not veering away from what they're trying to do internally, I guess, is the big picture, right? Like, they're not going out and getting some Wild West service because a customer asked for it. They're creating these stacks where, hey, this is what we do and this is what we cover, right? And we need to know how we can bend that into our model currently, because we're trying to hit the next level, right, of whatever that might be of maturity. So
let's pause on the importance of that, because if you're going to be a security practitioner, right, whether it's your lens as an SE or Matt and I's lens at an MSP where we were in the trenches, you cannot just implement any tool willy-nilly, right? And I learned this the hard way because we missed stupid easy incidents because we had bespoke tooling. So there wasn't this central place and understanding and operating manual for how our world worked, right? So it sounds like the more conversations you have, the more it's about trying to define a stack on how we're going to secure our customer base from front to back. Every customer of every size, we have and that's so that in and of itself is a huge show of maturity. They understand that they need the tools, they need the data to be the same across their customer base, right, or across their state that they're responsible for, so that they can then act on it in a uniform way and build a manual of operations, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And are you starting to see that as well in this, normalization of stack? Is that a fair way to say it, Matt, that you're seeing people talk about entire shifts of their tool set most of the time with tools? Are you still seeing piecemeal, well, this client needs DNS filtering, so I'm going to go ahead and do DNS filter for this one client, and I got this other client that needs some NIM effect? Or are you starting to see much more conversations, and maybe it's a mixed bag, but what are your thoughts on this? Are you seeing it be more holistic in its approach, like Dom was talking about?
I think it's definitely getting there. I'm 100% seeing that shift of it being holistic, but we still, like I said, it's still a mixed bag. where I'm still getting, hey, we need to tack this on, or hey, we're getting into frameworks now, right? I get a lot of partners like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm adopting the CIS framework, right? So we have to go through what that looks like. So they're actually trying to plug those gaps and figure out which tools are going to be the necessary things of where I want to be, again, internally, right? Whereas I think that's the big piece, right? Is where do we want to be as an organization, and what do we actually offer and do, rather than, hey, we're an MSP, we're just going to plug this in. We do endpoint, right? Or we do email security, and that's it. We just focus on that, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, right? But they're starting to get something that's a completely more developed, right? And they're sticking to what they can actually do within those frameworks and what tools are going to work. And they're a lot, I would say, less willy-nilly on, hey, we're just going to switch this EDR over, right? Because this other tool has X whistle or, X bell on it. It's going to be, no, we're looking at it from a technology standpoint. This is covering the basis we need, right? So this is good. The end user experience is good. We're managing it well, right? So, and then what is going to bolster onto that? That's going to integrate, speak to, each other seamlessly. How am I going to ingest that information to my SIEM, right? So you're getting a lot more of those conversations where it's not just, hey, I'm here for EDR today. It's like, here, let me tell you what I'm doing, right? And let me tell you what my stack is. And I've always practiced, going back to that question, right, a probe and pivot type method, right? When I'm getting on a call, I like to talk about, hey, what's going on? What are we solving today, right? And what else can we talk about, right? What other headaches, right? Once we address that original, now we can segue into what else is going on, right? What's working, what's not working. And I always like to put in my input with tools and things that they're using to help them get to the right spot, So
I learned something big about you right now, Matt, and I think we're better friends than I ever imagined we were, not just because of the name being the same or synonymous. You actually said SIEM, which stands for Security Information and Event Management. But you're weird like me. Like everybody else says SIM. I'm a SIEM guy. What about you, Dom? SIEM or SIM? You're SIM?
I'm a SIM guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the two awesome people that do SIEM. What about you out there in the chat? Like, light it up. Are you SIEM, SEEM in your mind? Are you SIM, I don't know, how do you, SIM? Maybe from phonetically?
I mean, it's not
Put it in the
security
chat there.
information. That doesn't make any sense.
So you're translatively putting the hard I of information instead of information. Is that what we're arguing here? Is the reason it's not SIEM or SIM?
For sure.
It's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair. It's an interesting phonetic roll-up methodology, but I guess I'm in. So I'm still sticking with SIEM, and maybe process and process depending on the day. So see, Positive Energy's got it. SIEM feels right. Thank you. I appreciate this. Anyways, Matt, I appreciate this little delve off, but one of the other things that I think is coming up, and it's been very unique in the last couple of months, ties into a theory that Pax8 has in general, which is, Dom, if you think about it, I was doing a project the other day, and I was working on trying to automate my garage door open and close without ever exposing it to the public internet directly, right? And so I was working on a project, and I saw this guy that used the type of methodology I wanted to use, and they were Shelly ones that I was going to use for this actuation. And so I was asking, what I should do. And what do you think I did to figure out how I was going to implement this? What was the first thing I probably did when I was trying to figure this out?
Googled it.
And then what did I do after I Googled it? What did I try to find after that pretty quickly, probably?
Yeah, you beat me.
Video?
Okay.
A white paper? Right? Yeah. And so when you think about it, this world is shifting just like my transaction. How many times have you had a dryer break and you're like, before I call the dude, I'm going to go look at a YouTube video so somebody can help me fix this C4 error or whatever it may be. My point is, we're shifting into a world that lots of times before someone buys something, they've already done a lot of the research. They've done a lot of the videos. They've tried to learn a lot of the things that they need to. And we're seeing a pivot. And I bring all this up to say, Matt, I've noticed a lot of videos coming online in our academy that tie directly into a lot of the stuff that you have to do on demos, a lot of the things you do in explanation or that would be done by salespersons in that space or would have been booked with you. Are you seeing a shift that people are willing to consume a lot of this content directly and by themselves rather than being in the call? And are you as an SE having to make a lot more of this content and try to figure out how to be a producer of content to share this in the right way without someone sitting there asking questions of you, right? And interacting.
I think that one comes down to how you learn, right? And what you're comfortable with, for sure. But yeah, definitely. I see a lot of partners who are very willing to take a demo on demand, right? Or a guide that we've created and ingest that. And they're able to go off and create a list of questions that they send back, right? And we don't really need to go through a sit down demo and discussion of that. But it is nice having that personalized touch, right? Where you can really get into it. And I think you cleared it up. You said it right? Where partners are coming in, they've already done the research, right? They already know what
Yeah.
they're getting into. And oftentimes it's not, hey, I don't want a generic demo and give me your spiel and your run through, right? What's your
Right.
pitch? It's, hey, yes, we know what this does. These are the specifics
Yeah.
we're looking for. Let me talk about these. Let's get into these weeds. And once we've gotten that down, now we can look at maybe some things that I'm thinking about, right? That the partner hasn't, right? And hey, you can tie this into whatever the original ask was, right? Or whatever the original need
Sure.
was. So it's becoming a lot less scripted, I feel, from our side, and it's a lot more conversational and open. But we definitely create a lot of content, right? And oftentimes I find myself creating specific documentation for our partners, right? If they need to, because there's, a ton of ways to get to the same result in a lot of these solutions,
Sure.
in a lot of cases. So
Like
it's,
seam or
it's
sim.
trying to make sure, hey, yeah, exactly, right? How do we get you to where you need to go? Here's the path that I would recommend, right? This is the path of least resistance. I want my head doing X, Y, and Z. Now I offload that knowledge onto the partner, right? And that goes a little bit further than the guide, but they definitely, having that data and ability to kind of look at what they're viewing is super huge. And we try to create updated content all the time. So
Yeah. I like that micro content. And it goes back to this point of like, I genuinely, unless I have something extremely nuanced that I can't get answered in a very succinct way or in a video or in a document, I now want to have that fairly nuanced conversation with somebody that's a professional and that understands this. And to your point, is an SME in some form or fashion of different products and the things I'm implementing. And so I think it actually makes everyone's time more efficient in the sense that if I already come in and I know what I need and I know what I'm actually trying to do, I know the key sticking points, then in the sales process and the operational implementation process, everything becomes more valuable in the moments you're speaking. You're now talking to an educated consumer. You're not talking to a person with the nuance and understanding what they're trying to execute. And the two of you are both getting more value out of every meeting. You're also not having as many delays for those meetings because you're allowing content to be many to one or one to many, where you can take something and do it once. Many people can use it and consume it, all driving the knowledge and capabilities up, while it then allows you to have more meaningful meetings with the time you have freed up from that time. And so I've really seen that not just out of you, but out of so many different people in the Pax8 world and community over the last 2 years, that we're increasing that content. And it really does make us more efficient. And I think hopefully better for the people that get to work with you and spend time with you and make it more meaningful and valuable for those things. Do you find you get to work with your counterparts on the other side, on the product side? Do you feel like that relationship is something that has gotten better? Is it maturing? Help me understand that kind of relationship of when you need something from the vendor to have a conversation to be educated yourself.
yeah, so I mean it's come full circle as well, right? With how we communicate with our vendors. I mean, we've got the VAM team that's out there with us, right? We've got vendor
Yep.
managers,
What's the
and analysts,
VAM?
and there's vendor account manager.
Okay, we just listen. We got to call them when we use them. We have to predefine our variables in this operating language, in this programming language here. So, all right, continue.
So, but I mean, it's made it really easy, and to be honest, there's a whole lot of hotlines that we have within Teams, right? So we're actually getting directly integrated and connected with a lot of these vendors who are, if we have questions and have things that we don't know and we need extra help, we can simply just send them a message. Say, hey, we need some time on a calendar, right? We need to get in and talk about X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. There's usually always someone that's happy to jump in and get that done for us, and everyone does a really good job at keeping everything structured to where it's a pretty easy pathway to escalate to vendors and get some feedback.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Well,
how have you
we're getting
seen,
towards
like, thinking about your tenure as an SE, right? So back when I was a partner, I think it was, I definitely tried to treat SE calls very much like I don't understand particular part X of the product, but it's not broken, so I'm not calling support. Like, hey, book me an SE call. How often do you find yourself doing that troubleshooting, or that, I guess, really more important than troubleshooting, the unconventional use of a product to accomplish a mission that's maybe slightly unconventional for that product?
Lot less now, right, than I did years ago. That's a lot. That's for sure. And again, there can be some weird gray area, right, between what's support and
Sure.
what needs to be escalated to an SE.
Sure.
And oftentimes I take those kind of support related requests and hey, something's not necessarily broken, like you said, so it's not support, but maybe it's just misconfigured. We don't know, right? And again, misconfiguration, huge point of failure, right, within IT. So this gives me an opportunity essentially when I get those kind of requests in. Hey, we already implemented, we already got this going, but things aren't working properly. That's just kind of an opportunity for me to jump in and train them on how that technology is supposed to work, right? And what they're going to be able to get out of this. And hey, let's try to configure things through Azure, right? Instead of going local to, local user base or something that's on the dashboard, right? So it gives us a lot of ability to kind of get into more of those issues, right? And learn ourselves. And it's something that, Mr. Lee said earlier is like a constant student, right? And that's how I kind of feel. It's like, every conversation I'm getting on with these partners, we're learning from each other. Right? I'm getting more information out of them. They're getting information out of me. We're bringing that knowledge together, which is just absolutely fantastic. Been getting in a lot of peer groups too. That's been just eye opening, right, from an MSP perspective. But it's unbelievably helpful. But yeah, I would say it's a lot less of those type of requests than it used to be for sure. But they still do come up, and like I said, I take it as an opportunity to train on the technology and what they're actually going to get out of it.
Love it.
And instead of just correcting, hey, this is how you change this, or hey, this is broken in your integration or your API, whatever it is. Let's talk about what you're trying to get, and is that actually going to fit the bill? So
that's awesome.
Right.
I love that you're giving that added value on top of that. So we've got a couple comments in LinkedIn that I wanted to touch real quick. One of them is Mario Alexander says, "Oh my God, yes! If I can watch a video before I talk to an SE or a pure salesperson." Are there pure salespeople? Anyways, so I can ask best practices questions versus learning the product during the meeting, right? I think that's one answer. Mario's saying, yeah, I love this. At the same time, and I love Matthias. Thanks for chiming in, buddies. Good seeing you. Says it's also based on the customer or client. There are those that would like to learn to resolve others and to learn to resolve. Others want it done for them, not wanting to figure out how to resolve something themselves. Any thoughts on that, on either of those comments before we kind of get to our wrap up here?
Matt, I'll let you go first, and then I'll do the hard take because I have a hard take.
I guess again, it depends on the partner, right? I mean, you get in these conversations, and it depends on who you're speaking with as well, right? Who's brought to the conversation when we're discussing tools?
Know your audience.
And how in depth can I actually get with this, or is this now being recorded as a demonstration, and you're going to share it with whoever didn't make it today and actually knows what I'm saying, right? Is a big piece,
right?
And I think that's important to note. And again, knowing your audience is going to be huge there. I guess that's kind of my take, right? It just depends on who you're talking to in those conversations.
I'm with the hate.
So here's my hard take. If you are a partner getting involved in the technology, it is your duty to better understand, especially in the security space, how those tools work, right? And that is a hard take, but you do not get to offload the knowledge that you need to be getting onto someone else. We're here to help you with that. We want to help you with that. We want you to be fantastic at it, but you cannot offload that duty. It cannot be done. So definitely, I would encourage you, if you were lucky enough to work with Monk or any of our SEs, make sure you turn that into a learning experience for the both of you so that you come out of that engagement better than you went in. That's my hard take.
I can't end it any better than that. So I think we're just going to do that. And I'll say, Matt, thank you so much, not only for being on the show. It was awesome. I think we wanted to highlight it just because your passion, your energy, your drive, the amount you care for the customers, for their end results and their success. It just warms my dang heart, man. So thank you for being here. And we'll probably have you back on. You're loquacious enough. I get to take a break, brother. And I appreciate that about you. So
I love it. No, thanks for having me, guys. That was amazing.
Thanks so much. That is our show for the week. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. It's been great having two-way conversation in the chat this week, so I hope we get to keep that up.
Awesome. Y'all are great.
Don't forget to sign up for Beyond, and if you attend next week's show, you'll get to learn what TitleCon is, which is something I just learned
It'll be awesome.
Literally today. Yeah. So if you want to learn what TitleCon is, make sure you join us next week because that's where Matt's going to be, and we'll see you then.